in 2020 when I had a near-death experience through an accidental overdose. And that's when it hit me, when you're faced with your mortality, when you come face to face with your mortality, you think, okay, what if that was the day? What would have been your legacy? And I started thinking deeply about that. And my mission now has been life transformation through inspiration. So everything I do, Anthony, with my podcast, with the books that I write, with the mentorship program that I have, Grace to Grow Mentorship and Training Limited, everything that I do, the coaching, the speaking, the writing, everything that I do is connected to my life's mission.
Yeah.
So having a champion mindset means that I know things are going to come that are not necessarily favorable, but am I going to allow it to pull me down, or am I going to leverage it to move forward? Knowing that whatever it is that is happening, I am not going through something, I am growing through something.
Welcome to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. Today, from purpose to profit. Join us as we dive into empowering stories and actionable insights with Heneka Watkis-Porter, the dynamic entrepreneur and podcasting powerhouse who helps leaders thrive with faith, vision, and unstoppable action. I'm your host, Anthony Dahya, and I'm so grateful that you're here listening or watching this podcast episode. Would love for you to share this episode with your friends, your family, and your workmates. And if you haven't already done so, please follow or subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes, and we can get this podcast out to the wider community. Today's guest is Heneka Watkis-Porter. She's an entrepreneur, corporate podcast host and producer, coach, 7 times author, international speaker, and the host of the Entrepreneurial You podcast TV show. Heneka has interviewed Lisa Nichols, Les Brown, Richard Branson, John Lee Dumas, Paul Carrick, Brunson, Seth Godin, and many other influencers. Heneka, welcome to the Champion Mindset Collective.
Anthony, it's such a pleasure to be here. It took us a while to get here, but here we are, and we are so grateful.
Yeah, wow, you've got some big names there that you've interviewed on your podcast. I can only aspire to be able to get to that point where I can, but like I think when we had that chat on the discovery call, you mentioned how you were just relentless and you would just, contact people until they said yes,
Yeah.
right?
And so, I mean, at any level, you can get anybody, you can speak to anybody. Like, it doesn't matter where you are, you can always have a conversation with anyone.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we ahead of time eliminate ourselves by thinking that it's not going to happen for us, right? I reached out. I mean, there are always 3 possibilities: yes, no, not yet, right? And so if it's a no, well, here's the reality. Statistically, every no gets you closer to a yes, right?
Absolutely.
Because there are so many no's that will come with any given scenario. If you've done statistics, you know that, right? And so get rid of the no's from the very onset, from the top, so you know that based on statistics, those number of no's have already come, so you're in a better chance to get a yes. Because statistically, every no gets you closer to a yes.
Yes, and it's also weeding out the people that you probably don't want, that are probably not resonating with you, right? Or at the right vibrational energy for you.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter what level they're at, they're not necessarily the right fit for your podcast at that given time. And so the question of, all right, maybe it's not a no, but it's later down, maybe when there's some alignment, because if there's no alignment, it's going to cause some form of a discrepancy with your audience, because they can sense when something is not necessarily a part of, it doesn't align. And so you're perhaps just doing this with the wrong motive, and it's not a win-win for everybody.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, totally. So Heneka, it's been a while since we got here. I don't know, it's been a few months since we've been trying to get this podcast interview happening, but we're finally here, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I think it's like midday for you. It's like 6 o'clock in
Yes,
the morning.
under the 8 minutes past 12 right here.
Yeah, and and it's 6 minutes, it's 8 minutes past 6 a.m. here. And so finally we got a time that we were able to get together and chat. Um, what I'd love for you to share your journey, your story in your life. Where did you start? Like how did tell us about your childhood, your growing up, some of the highlights, some of the challenges, summarize what that was like for you and what
Yeah.
led you up to this point. Yeah.
So as a child, I mean, opportunities never abound. I grew up very sheltered, didn't have self-confidence, self-esteem, faced a lot of trauma that young girls my age shouldn't have to face. But the truth is, I knew even then, even with the trauma, even with the despondency, the feelings of rejection and abandonment and disappointment, even with those, there's just something within me that knew at that time that I was made for greatness. When you have a knowing, I can't tell you how as a little girl, I just had that feeling because somehow you feel that you're not in an environment where it facilitates, that kind of a aspiration. But yet I knew there was more. I knew that I would one day have global impact, I'd one day be somebody that can inspire others. And my mission now has been life transformation through inspiration. So everything I do, Anthony, with my podcast, with the books that I write, with the mentorship program that I have, Grace to Grow Mentorship and Training Limited, everything that I do, the coaching, the speaking, the writing, everything that I do is connected to my life's mission, which, as I mentioned,
Mm,
is life transformation through inspiration. I am aware that several people are living vicariously through my eyes. I am aware that whatever I do, I'm influencing somebody else.
mm,
Sometimes it's just one person. Sometimes it's just in my little sphere of influence locally. Sometimes it's several people. Sometimes it's over 140 countries via podcast. Sometimes it's in a group of, I don't know, 10 women, and I'm encouraging and I'm mentoring and I'm motivating. So it comes at different times, in different ways. But one thing for sure, everything that I do must align with my life's mission. If it doesn't align, then I
mm,
move on. Yes,
Yeah, absolutely. You got to follow your life's mission, your purpose, and everything yeah, because if it's not aligned, it's not going to take you where you're going, right? It's just going to be distractions. Yeah, yeah. So,
absolutely.
yeah. So you're in Jamaica, is that correct?
Yes,
And
Jamaica, sweet, sweet Jamaica, Anthony.
we've those of us who don't have never been there or don't live there have heard lots about it. And tell us what it is. What is it? Excuse me. What was it like growing up in Jamaica, and what has it been like? Going on this journey. What are your family, your friends? What inspiration have you given them?
All right, before I answer your question, let me ask you, what have you heard about Jamaica?
Well, only what I've seen on movies and so on, but yeah, not a lot, to
Okay,
be
no, no,
honest.
no. Okay.
Yeah.
Growing up in Jamaica, I didn't know, for example, as a child, like, you don't have stuff around and everything, but I didn't know that I was what you call poor.
Mm,
Because even though you didn't have a lot, you always had your meal to go to your bed and stuff. I recognize that my house was different, like it was fenced up and zinc and all kind of stuff, and there time and water was coming through the roof and all of that. And yet, even in spite of the trauma that I have faced, even in spite of everything, not having confidence and self-esteem, um, in spite of all of those, I did have a good childhood. I mean, it's such a complex situation. I did have a good childhood, growing up, eating the fruits from the trees and the mango, the mangoes, the bananas, the oranges, the June plum, the apples, the sugar cane, all of that. And then growing up in church with my friends, we've come together, and one of the fondest moments for me growing up as a child is So back then there was no cell phone. Like, hello people, I'm dating myself right here. There was no cell phone. There was the community telephone booth. And so every Sunday before we go to youth fellowship, my friends and I would gather and we would walk to the telephone booth and we'll form this long line with everybody else. Even when you don't have anybody to call, it was a thing. Like you just had to go to the telephone booth to make a call because you had to seem important. You had to seem like you had somebody to call. So it was that kind of thing, and just going to church. I remember that. I remember school. I didn't have a lot of friends. I had a few friends and we would go together and people used to think that I was bright. I don't know where they got that from because I was never one of those bright child, I was never a bright child, but people thought that way. I guess I did better than most. So, because I'm a late bloomer, Anthony, I'm one of those you call late bloomers, right? It's in my latter years that I recognize that there's so much more in me, within me, than what it is that I knew and what it is that I was letting on or even encouraged to pursue.
Yeah, I totally resonate with you because I'm one of the late bloomers as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right. But that's interesting how, you were lining up with your friends, even though you may not have anyone to call, but it's that being that person at that time, right? And yeah, no, it
It's
sounds.
just funny. It's hilarious. I mean, and I've watched like just to give you a little context, I've watched um there's so many transitions that or telecommunications companies have gone through. So first I think it was Jamaica Telephone Company, then it became Telecommunications of Jamaica, then it became Cable and Wireless, then it became B-Mobile, then it became Lime, then it
Mhm.
became Cable and Wireless. So it has gone through so many transition when it was
Evolutions. Yeah,
owned. Yeah, I think it was owned by the government and then it was divested. And so all of these transitions until now, in the latter years, we had well, a couple, maybe decades now, we've had a second phone company came on board and so the competition between the two. But it's just an amazing transformation. And it talks a lot to businesses, only the ones that continue to recognize that the only constant is change. Only
mm,
those will last,
yeah, yeah,
because things become obsolete and processes and strategies that were once for your A game, they're now obsolete and they no longer serve a purpose or serve the purpose that initially they came about for. So to watch a transition over years, and I can see how it's applicable to business as a business person, as a leader.
yeah. It's interesting we talk about transitions and change because this week I've been running a 5-day challenge all around shift happening in our lives, right? And
Hmm.
it kind of plays on the shit happens in life, but shift happens through that. And so today is the last day of that challenge. And it's even though I haven't had a lot of people online, I've been able to post those videos and I'm sure it's changing, it helping people, right? And you said change is constant. Change is something that's always going to be with us, and
Hmm.
it's learning how to manage our emotions. It's learning how to be mindful and also have the right mindset and have resilience through that change. And I'm sure you've been through many changes and transitions in your life to evolve into the person that you are today. So your journey has been quite diverse as an entrepreneur, a podcast host, author, and a mentor. What inspired you to pursue a multifaceted career, and how do you balance it all?
All right, so let me tell you the truth. Can I just be real with you?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you know how, and we're late bloomers, so these things happen, right?
Mm,
And even sometimes as parents, we try to push our children to know what you want now and know what you're about and da da da. And the truth is, I can tell you, I'm just trying to figure it out, right?
mm,
I'm still
mm,
trying to figure it out.
mm.
So all of those things that I've pursued happened as a result of my trying to figure out what my life is all about. Essentially, I know what the mission is, But what I've recognized over time is that the strategy to accomplishing the mission may not necessarily be the same at all times, right? At different seasons, it requires something totally different. And so I've experimented. I've never been one to say, oh, I'm not going to try this. I'm going to try something new, right? I started with a clothing line, a brand that's called Patois Pearl. That's how I started. And I needed to transition from that into digital entrepreneurship. And and it was also while in brick and mortar entrepreneurship, I recognized, hey, but you have the potential to do all these things. So why not explore and see where it takes you? And so a lot of that has to do, has happened as a result of the exploration that I have been doing. And what is, feeding my soul right now is one, the podcast, interviewing all of these persons from around the world and having such a great time doing it. That's feeding my soul. But not only that, my social enterprise, Grace to Grow Mentorship and Training, because I find that I'm in my happy place when I am able to impact somebody on a personal level through my mentorship and through my coaching, right? Writing the books, that's just a way to reach many people at once. There's so much person I can coach at any given time, so many people I can mentor at any given time. But the book, I can just be in my sleep and I'm impacting somebody. So one of the things I've lived by is once you've learned, teach. And so particularly that's how the podcast book, and that's why it came about, Podcast Power, the quick start guide to launching and leveling up your brand, because I have used and leveraged podcasting to get my brand even more recognized. And as a result of that, I've written the book, and in writing the book, I'm learning and I have learned, so I'm now teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And each human being has such a unique experience in life, right? We are all here experiencing different different versions of our life, and as you said before, just as a child, you might know what you want to do for that present day, right? But change happens so frequently in our lives that there's no way of knowing what you want to do in 20, 30 years time, right? And yeah, absolutely. It's the same with me with the podcast. You know, once you release that episode, you don't know how many people's lives you're going to touch, right? And and
Absolutely.
and that's why we do it, because it's not for money or anything, but I mean, money helps. But the thing is, it's to touch people's lives, it's to transform people's lives, it's to be able to give back and help people, right? So looking back, was there a pivotal moment that solidified your passion of entrepreneurship and mentorship?
So looking at entrepreneurship and looking at mentorship, and let's take them separate, right? The period that solidified this, and let's deal with the mentorship first. The period that solidified my wanting to do mentorship is, and I've always been doing it informally, right? But from a really structured, formal standpoint, it was in 2020 when I had a near-death experience through an accidental overdose. And that's when it hit me, when you're faced with your mortality, when you come face to face with your mortality, you think, okay, what if that was the day? What would have been your legacy? And I started thinking deeply about that. And I recognized, even though I've been doing all these amazing stuff, I needed to impact women in particular, on a more structured level and on a deeper level. And that is how Grace to Grow Mentorship and Training came about. Grace to Grow, simply because that was a divine inspiration from God, saying to me, reminding me, because even though I'm a mentor and stuff, I can be very impatient. In fact, I am very impatient. Let me just put that there. Right. And with that, the Lord said to me, Heneka, you need to give people grace to grow. And even before that, he has been telling me that, give people grace to grow, because I have this thing that once I've gotten it, once I've gotten a new way of thinking, a new mindset, I've received something, it's like I want somebody else to get it just like that. And it is so unfair. In all honesty, it is so unfair. And so Right. So it's learning to give others grace, even as I give my own self grace, because we can be so hard on ourselves, right? Give myself grace to get to the next level that I want to get to, be patient with myself, and to apply that same patience to others, even as God Himself has given us grace. So that's where that came from. That's the inspiration, that's the motivation, that's a pivotal aspect of that. And when it comes on to entrepreneurship, I think the most pivotal point for me was when I recognized that I could run a business, when I recognized that I've been given an idea and I am taking action on that idea, and I recognize the reception, to that idea in 2007 rather, in 2007, when I decided, yes, I'm going to start this business, because before that, I've been toying with the idea, wrestling with the idea of having my own business. And then it came about. So with that, I just knew that my life is never going to be the same. And
Mm,
so when I was able to leave my job, give up my, paid vacation, paid sick leave, subsidized lunch, health insurance, all of these things, give up that certainty for the uncertainty of running your own business. That for me was mega. And I've never
mm.
looked back. I've never looked back.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you're a true inspiration to me because I'm in that space now where I've given up all that uncertainty after going through 24 restructures and four redundancies in my career. And, you know, what I'd like to ask you is that journey from when you started your business. I mean, were there challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them? What kept
Were
you,
they,
what was your mindset like and what kept you going?
were they challenges?
Mm,
Oh Lord, there've been several. I mean, one of them in particular, and it's one to this day, I I think I've made peace. And every time I talk about it, this is what I say. I think I've made peace with it, but I'm really wondering if I have actually made peace with it. And it's when I started a sauce line, right? And that brand, because of what I was doing with my clothing and the love for Jamaican language, applying it to my clothing, it was a natural thing for me to use that same language type in anything else that I was doing. So I was doing food, and it's Jamaican food. So I applied that similar concept of a name. Unbeknownst to me was that there was a restaurant with that same name that I used. I mean, when I searched for it via our IP office, intellectual property office in Jamaica, nothing came up for me. And it was fine. And I went and I started to do the application process to register the name. Lo and behold, shortly after, I was hit with some lawsuits, right? A
wow.
cease and desist order. The long and short of that story is that we've been battling court. I won something, they appealed it, they won, and it was just going back and forth. And it was getting to my peace of mind, disturbing my peace of mind. And so I decided to settle. I mean, had it been now, I wouldn't have. And so it's one of my biggest business regrets that I settled. I paid a hefty sum out of court, just to just listen. Let's just settle out of court. Let's just stop this thing, because it's just
Mm,
draining my energy. But looking back, it was a challenge financially for me. And it's one of those things that I look back and I think, you know what, Heneka, you did not make the right choice. You didn't. You made a
mm,
choice that in retrospect you shouldn't have.
mm,
Um, it is a learning experience, but it's still a painful one because, and it's years, so it's something I need to let go of. But the truth is, if I do regrets, and I usually don't, if I do regrets, then that's one of my biggest regrets ever, if not the
mm,
only one.
mm,
And there've been several challenges in terms, the fundamental challenge though has been the challenge with people,
mm,
employing the right person, keeping the right person, and it's one of the hardest thing as a business owner to get the right people on board and to keep the right people. So that for me has been my number one challenge. How I do that now, how I respond to that challenge now, is a shift in my mindset to recognize that, hey, Heneka, these people, to expect of them to have that same level of energy and enthusiasm and everything that you do is so unfair.
Mm,
And when I wasn't getting that over the years, I was just quick to let people go because I
mm,
wasn't getting what was, in all fairness, very unfair to them. I had an
mm.
expectation that could not be met because there's no way anybody's going to give the time and the dedication that I do because it's my business, not theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And we often lose sight that people are individuals and they they have their own way of working and being, and we've got we've got to be able to be compassionate and empathetic towards them. Yeah. So hosting the Entrepreneurial You podcast has allowed you to interview some amazing, incredible influencers, which I'm still like going, what? Over. But then, but then I was thinking about this and going, because if we're all connected, right, there is no reason why I cannot um, interview someone that I'm desiring to interview because all I've got to do is bring that person closer, right? And
Mhm.
yeah, and as you said, it could be about timing. It could be that it doesn't resonate with your with your purpose and your mission in life. So, what has been the most profound lesson you've learned from a guest that stuck with you?
Oh, wow, there's just been so many. As you talk about, yeah, we're all connected, Anthony. At one point we were 6 degrees of separation from each other. No, with the internet, we're like 1 degree of separation, right? So
Mm,
you know somebody, if I want to get to Oprah Winfrey, for example,
mm,
there's one person that you may know that can
mm,
connect me to. Before it was okay, you know one person who know another, and until you get to 6 degrees of separation. But no, it's just 1 degree. So we're all connected. I've learned so many lessons. Well, first, as it relates to connecting with these people that I admire, is one, don't assume that they're going to say no at all, right? As long as you look into what's in it for them, right? What's in it for me? Everybody's tuned into WIIFM. What's in it for me,
mm,
right? And everybody's looking at that.
mm. Yeah,
So once you do that,
yeah.
once you think about that, but also shipping creative work has been one of the things that I latched onto. That's one. And I'm looking because I'm looking for the book in my studio, in my office. Shipping Creative Work by Seth Godin. I interviewed him for my 200th episode, and that was my second time interviewing Seth. And in shipping creative work, the concept is just do it. Don't wait to be perfect. Don't wait to get to perfection. In entrepreneurship, we say what's the minimum viable product, right? That you can launch to get it out there. It's a similar concept. Don't wait for it to be perfect. Just do
No,
it.
yeah.
And there's something when I interviewed Les Brown again, I mean, I grew up with him, so listening to him and stuff, and I've always listened to him say this. But when to hear him when he shared that with me on the podcast, again, it's something that resonated. It
Mm,
says, when life hits you down, try to land on your back because if you can look up, then you can
mm,
get up. If you
mm,
can look up, you can get up. And that also resonates. And there's just so many different things that have
mm.
resonated with me over time. Like I'm a repository of all things inspiration and motivation from all the guests. I mean, I have close to 400 episodes out now.
Wow.
So of the Entrepreneurial You podcast, right? So
Mm.
you can imagine that every week I'm hearing all these amazing points being driven over in my ear and reverberating and stuff. So I'm indeed a repository of good content and salient points.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, wow, what a journey. 400 episodes. I'm I'm up to episode 75. I mean, I've got a whole lot backed up that I've got to edit and publish, but I think I'll get to about 100 by the end of this year. And I've only just, I think a month ago, I hit one year of doing podcasting. And thank you.
Congratulations.
And I looked this morning and I'm about 7 plays and downloads away from 1,500 plays and downloads, 1.5K. So I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's a cool milestone. But like you said, I when I started this, I didn't look for perfection. I just put out content. I just put out information out there so that people could
Mhm.
start to consume it and start helping people's lives, right? And I remember one episode that I shared around it was embracing uncertainty through life transitions and job losses and restructuring. And I had just started a role, and 3 months into the role, I got restructured and made redundant. And but I shared that with 5 people at work, and all 5 people said to me, the the um, the way you reframed change has completely given us a new perspective, and it means they're thinking totally different about this. And now I'm in this space where I'm helping businesses do change better, navigate change better, and empower their people to then strengthen their business. As a as a
Good
newbie in
stuff.
yeah, as a newbie in podcasting compared to I don't compare myself, but you know, you've done 400 episodes. I'm coming up to my 100 episodes by the end of this year. What advice would you give me as a rookie podcaster? Well, I'm not quite a rookie yet. I
A
guess
year in your, trust me, a year in and you're a pro, believe me.
I'm a pro. Yeah.
Uh,
What advice would you give me?
the number one thing I'd want to say to you, and I say to everybody when they're starting a podcast, thinking of it, into it, is consistency is key.
Mm,
That's the currency to get you to for almost like I don't have 400 published yet, but pretty soon they're done, but pretty soon they'll be published, right?
mm,
And that has been the key in getting me here. From I started in 2017, I have been consistent,
mm, mm,
right? And so my advice to you is along the way you'll figure it out. You will listen to your audience, and it doesn't matter how small you think they may be. Just imagine you being in a room with those persons. I'm sure it would mean a lot to you even more. So see them as people who you actually are engaging with, that you're in a room
mm,
with them. And just as how you would want 1 million downloads, those many people who are listening to you, imagine them in that room with you,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so, yes, but number one
Yeah.
is to stay consistent.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's not about the analytics and the stats and how many I've done. It's
Mhm.
all about what impact am I making in this world? How am I changing people's
Absolutely.
lives, right? And that's always been the intent for me. So how do you prepare for these interviews to, what's your routine? How do you prepare for them and to bring out the best in the conversations with your guests?
So I do usually do a little research with the guest about the guests on the guests, based on a lot of persons sometimes reach out and so on. I do some research. I do an outline. I always have an outline. And that outline have some questions. It has some questions, but I'm not married to those questions. And usually, the truth is, by the time I get to having starting that conversation, most of what was intended to ask are not asked. Because the conversation takes on a life of its own. So I prepare, but I try not to over prepare. My
Mm,
preparation for me mostly have to do with just getting the outline so I know, okay, this is the intro, because there's some things I'll keep standard. The intro, um, the outro, and little thing about, if I have an advertiser on board and so on. So I'll keep those standard. But everything else in between, quite
mm.
flexible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do something similar. As you know, I have an intro and outro, but I usually ask the guest to give me a bio, and my
Hmm.
questions are then custom created based on that bio. Um, and again, like this interview, we've had questions, but we've done a lot of other
Of course. Oh
chats as
yeah.
well. Yeah,
It's just based on how the conversation flow, and I like that,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's got to be organic, right? And you've got to
Yes.
be able to have a conversation rather than just a question and answer. Because no one really wants to listen to question and answers. So through the Grace and Grow, and we talked about this before about your mentorship training, you empower women to step into their God-given purpose. What are the common challenges that you see women face trying to find their purpose?
Identity, not knowing who they
Mm,
are.
mm.
When I ask the question, who are you? They can't tell me.
Do you
And
feel
so,
do you feel that's tied to their job or their position or what?
yes, it's
Yeah.
usually, and if they don't have a job, if they don't have any career, they feel like, what am I? Who am I? What do I matter? And they feel like
Mm,
they're not enough. So it's
mm,
usually going through Grace to Grow, mentorship and training. And in fact, we're interviewing now for volunteers from all over the world. Um, Going through that, it's just been a journey to watch those women not understanding their worth, not knowing who they are, not feeling like they matter. To at the end of the program, they understand that they were created for a purpose
mm.
and to start living that purpose. So it's the greatest joy to watch a transition, even
Yeah.
after identifying what their that number one thing is that they come into the program with.
Mm. What would you say is some steps that people could take uh, on their own to really discover their purpose in life? I mean, this podcast is all about discovering and unleashing your potential and your purpose. So, um, what do you say to people when in conversation if they don't, what are the tips that
One
you
of
give them?
one of the things for me is just as how a refrigerator, a television, all of those things, they come with a manual,
Mm,
right? I believe that as people, we come with a manual from the creator.
mm,
Whoever you decide the creator to be, I decide the creator is God,
mm,
and I subscribe to that. Uh, I always lead people in a direction. Go back to what the Bible says about you. The Bible says you're fearfully and wonderfully made. The Bible says that you're created for a purpose. You were given things in advance to do. Now, how do you figure out, or do you practically figure out those things in advance that you were given to do? I normally take persons through this exercise, skills versus passions.
mm,
On one side, I ask them to list the skills, on another, list their passion.
mm,
Look at both of them. Usually there's some overlapping, right? Wherever that intersection happens, that's where we consider the zone of genius, your
mm,
zone of expertise, your zone of passion, your zone of purpose, whatever. Because usually the things that you've always liked to do over time, like from you were little, some of the things you didn't even remember about, and even what your friends say and your family members say, and you
mm-hmm,
start looking at those things, you're like, oh, but wait a minute. Yeah. I was created to help people um get unstuck, or I was created to be a motivator. I'm always motivating people. Or I love to talk a lot. I love to solve problems. Maybe I was created to be a lawyer.
mm,
Maybe,
mm,
right? And so even as I say that, from a even at a deeper level, we're created to bring other people into the kingdom of God, to be honest with you, right? So, because that is all of what we do, you ask yourself the question, what is the end? To what end am I doing this?
mm,
And the end that I'm doing this is toward building a kingdom here on earth, kingdom of
mm,
God here on earth.
mm,
And that is mine. I'm aware, Anthony, that a lot of people won't subscribe to this necessarily. And so I don't always share from a faith perspective, but I've always shared, look into yourself, look deep within your heart. go deeper,
Mm.
go silent for a while and listen
Mm.
for the answer because everything is within.
Yeah,
Everything is within.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and
Mm-hmm.
he says when you sit in your silence, then that's when the answers come. Because everything you need, all the answers that you need are within yourself. You
Oh
don't need to
yeah.
look outside. Yeah.
And that's why, Anthony, I decided on beginning December 1. By this time, or year, or episode may still not, it may year after, but on December 1, 2025, for the entire month of December, I'm going on a sabbatical
Mm.
from social media. Yes, I'll be checking in on emails every now and again, taking some WhatsApp messages and stuff, but just totally on him, just totally not engage as much as I would be engaging because I want to hear. I want
Mm.
the clarity to go into 2025. I believe 2025 is going to be a very significant year for many reasons. And I want clarity going into it. And I can't get the clarity if I'm bombarded by noise
Mm.
on social media, noise on noise from sticking to a schedule that I normally try to stick to.
Mm.
I have to just be totally mindless,
Mm.
going in, just maybe doing some gardening, reading, meditating, praying, journaling, those things that feed my soul.
Mm. Yeah, totally. Totally. Absolutely. And we've got to do that. And I was listening to Jay Shetty a long time ago, and he does that every year. I think he
Mm-hmm.
takes January off to really
Oh, it's
just,
January he takes. Yeah.
yeah, he takes January, the whole of January off to just, realign to his purpose. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because,
Mm-hmm.
during the year, so many things happen and you can get so busy with things. But when you start the year off, he takes a whole month off.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I normally take the month like January. For me, it's I still go slow.
Mm.
I'm not one of those like December, like they tell you, oh, you have to close the year with a bang. No, I don't necessarily have to close the year with a
No.
bang. It's okay to not close the year with a bang. It's okay to not finish the year strong. I'm fine with that. I'm good with that. Because I've done all the work from
Mm.
maybe March into October because I find my body works with a rhythm. So by October into December and January, I am right into December, I'm slowing down, I'm going down. And then in January, I'm slowly trying to crawl back up, you know?
Mm. Mm.
And so by March, I begin to peak again.
Mm.
And I find that so in January for me is where I kind of pause and detox. I still do stuff, but I am still pacing myself. I'm still very slowly easing into it. I am not rushing into January like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. No. So December and January for me, well, starting from October when I'm going down into December when I saw, and January now I'm slowly easing back into it and until I peak in March, and then I slow down, and June it comes. Like my body goes through an entire rhythm and I can see
Mm. Mm. Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, so how do you guide the woman through these obstacles and to thrive?
So this mentorship program that I do, and we're contemplating changing it up a bit where there are some costs associated with it. I mean, there's costs associated, except that it's not borne by the woman. But we're thinking about shifting that because when you pay attention, um, and that's the reality. But we take them through a 12-week program, flagship program, through 5 pillars. So leadership, or skills. There's entrepreneurship, then leadership, skills or entrepreneurship. Then there is mentoring or coaching, mindfulness, and there's something else. Don't you remember what that one is, right?
Mm.
But there are 5 pillars, and within those 5 pillars, there are areas that we've selected for each, and so we look at things like goal setting, money management, parenting, all of those stuff for 12 weeks. So we go through, in addition to each session is intentional about guiding them through identifying their identity, knowing their identity, identifying their purpose. And then we move out into all of these other areas. So at the end of the program,
Mm,
you can see the transformation, and a lot of things that these women, they've never been exposed to before. And so they come in and they're like, you know, lots of aha moments, and just a
mm,
beautiful time.
mm.
And
That's great.
they graduate at the end of it too with their certificates.
Mm, that's amazing. That's awesome. Cool. All right. So you've authored 7 books and you've taken multiple leadership roles. What advice would you give someone who's wanting to step into and diversify their career without feeling overwhelmed about it?
Know what is right for you. A lot of times we look on social media, we look on everybody else, and oh, Anthony's doing that. Maybe I should.
Mm, mm,
And so before you know it, you feel so confused because you're looking on what everybody else is doing, not
mm,
necessarily about what you want to do and what you should be doing.
mm. Yeah.
So as we talked about this, whole um pros and cons, not the looking at the skills and the passions and so on, I'd encourage persons to just do a brain dump of your life,
Mm-hmm.
what
Yep.
you've done, what you want to do, just dump it all out there. And then by process of elimination, start to look at the areas that you'll have most impact in.
Mm.
What area will I be most impactful in? Where am I needed the most?
Yeah.
What value can I add the most? And where
Yeah.
can I add the most value? And notwithstanding all of that, you also need to
Mm.
think about what will yield me the greatest return for my effort as well.
Mm. Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're not doing a non-profit and stuff like that, you need to be thinking the bottom line.
Mm.
So it's the bottom line in addition to your impact. But first your impact, because the impact usually brings the money.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your faith and how it's guided you with your achievements and your choices in life.
Oh Lord, without my faith, I don't know how I would get through
Mm.
because life is messy. And I just think that the difference between myself and somebody else who doesn't have faith, we go through the same obstacle, we face the
Mm.
same challenges, but what is different is our perspective,
Yeah.
right? For me, I subscribe to Romans 8:28, for we know that all things work together for good for they that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose.
Mm.
So whatever comes my way, I'm able to, with a perspective, knowing that, hey, this too shall pass. It is happening for a reason. I'm not going through it, I'm growing through it. And that my faith anchors me. So my faith is everything to me. It anchors me. And yes, I get depressed, and yes, I get anxious, and yes, I get miserable and frustrated, and all of these things that humans go through. But at the end of it, I'm able to do a reset,
Yeah.
right? And to
Yeah.
come back and get centered again.
Yeah. I love what you said there about going through it
Growing through it.
versus growing
Yeah,
through it. I'm going to borrow that, growing through it.
sure.
Yeah, thank you.
It's yours.
All right. Well, before we go into the 5 quick fire questions and in uh, towards the end of this, well, as we end this call, um, how would people get hold of you if people want to get in touch with you, join your program? How do they get in touch with you?
All right, everything is there.
Mm,
HenekaWatkis-Porter.com.
mm,
HenekaWatkis-Porter.com. You can, all different tabs, the podcast, the blogs, the book, the podcast production, Grace to Grow, everything that we've spoken about right there. And you also get a freebie if you're into podcasting or considering podcasting, or even if you're any kind of media where you talk to people or anything, you just download the free ebook, podcast success interview like the pro you are. So HenekaWatkis-Porter.com. It will take you to all my email addresses, my email address, my social media. Of course, in December I'll be off, but other than that, you get me on social media or WhatsApp, whichever is your favorite platform.
yeah, we'll put all those links into the podcast description, and I'll be getting a
Yes.
getting a copy of that book as well, ebook as well.
Awesome.
Something
Awesome.
something I can read and get inspired by. Um,
Mhm.
so here's the quick fire questions. How do you define success, and has that definition changed for you over time?
Yes. Oh, initially, when I was much younger, success would be lots and lots and lots of money in the bank, loads of it. Several real estate holdings, everything. Having all of those. But now for me, success is wealth. And wealth for me means wealth of information, my health, wellness, my ability to do the things that I love. So, for example, there are times when I love going to hotels and things like that. And there are times when I've gone to hotel and I've leveraged my podcast, for example, as an influencer to get stays at hotel. I wouldn't necessarily in that moment have the cash that I need to do that, but I still am able to do what I want, right? So we're not necessarily aligning money to success right now for me. And success is just, again, doing the things that I want because I can in the time that I want. I'm on my way to success, right? Being able right now to take care of my two nieces that I'm taking care of. I'm working from home. I'm doing my thing from home, and I have the ability to pause, set my own schedule, and to do that. That for me is priceless.
Mm.
The MasterCard, I would say for everything else, there's MasterCard.
Yeah. All right. Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
Oh Lord, different people have inspired me over time, right? So right now, my greatest inspiration as it relates to my personal development is Paul Martinelli. He runs the Empowered Living community, and he's just such a phenomenal human being, a phenomenal leader. So he's my greatest inspiration right now as it relates to my personal development. As it relates to my spiritual development, I can tell you that right now in this moment, because my family is experiencing a very tough time with one of our newborn, and just going through the book of Job, just seeing how Job dealt with everything that he did and he went through. He's my biggest inspiration now spiritually.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Great. That's awesome. What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
Well, for one, that there is a God. I really believe in the power of faith.
Mm.
And as I get into this question, because I do get into it with my family, particularly my brother and stuff, and as he's searching right now, he's asking a lot of questions regarding faith and God and so on. And even the other day, I was having a lovely conversation with an atheist and about, how does a good God allow things to happen to bad things that happen to good people, and why, and why is it that, just many questions. So a lot of people don't necessarily agree, but fundamentally for me, I believe there's a God. I don't understand everything, Anthony. What the Bible that I subscribe to say, I don't. A lot of things I question myself, but one thing I know for sure, without faith, as the Bible says, it's impossible to please God. And I know this journey I'm on is as a result of faith. And also I know we're talking about, business and all of this, but faith for me is a fundamental part of entrepreneurship, my journey. And as I look on and I see how um traditionally people have kind of said, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to um get saved and go to heaven and da 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 da. But hello, heaven is on earth. It's a part, you're saved not necessarily to quote unquote go to heaven. Heaven is on earth. There are different dimensions to heaven. Parts of the kingdom is on earth, heaven is also on earth. But it's understanding that I'm part of a kingdom and I wasn't necessarily saved for going to heaven's sake. While I live on this earth, I should be very mindful of taking advantage of all the kingdom principles that exist. I know this is maybe confusing for a lot of people because I'm getting deeper into the faith realm and stuff, but I just think it's important to share my own view, and it's not the view of Anthony for everybody listening. It's my own view, and what has informed my journey.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Girl, relax. Everything's gonna
Yeah.
be all right.
Yeah.
Girl,
Yeah.
chill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what is one last message you'd like to share with the world?
You know what? Everything is within you. You've got everything within you to do what you need to do. You may be going through a rough time right now. Things may not be in alignment with what you think, your life should be and how you think your life should be. But I tell you, I kid you not, everything is well. It is going to be okay. It's already okay because you have everything that is within you. All you need to do is look within. Be
Mm.
still. Listen to your inner self, your inner voice. We are spiritual beings that are housed in a physical body. Listen to what your spirit is saying to you and act accordingly. And for everything else, reach out to me for podcast production if you want to get a seamless podcast like you're hearing here. Anthony, big up yourself, right? If you guys want
Mm.
to get your podcast started, please, I am the person to reach out to, henekawatkis-porter.com. If you
Mm.
want to get my book on how to use your podcast to level up your brand, henekawatkis-porter.com. So yeah, go and be your best self. You
Yeah,
deserve it.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Very last question, and it's a double barrel one, is what is what does it mean to you to be a champion, and what does a champion mindset mean to you?
Being a champion mean, and it's something I've been saying lately, and it's just a line that says, I'm not doing it. What is it? Anything that does not align, anything that makes me uncomfortable, anything that um infringes on my boundaries, I have a stance, and it is, I'm not doing it.
Mm.
Right? So that for me is being a champion, being able to boldly state the things that I will accept and those that I will not,
Mm.
and don't feel uncomfortable about doing it.
Mm. Yeah.
So having a champion mindset means that I know things are going to come that are not necessarily favorable, but am I going to allow it to pull me down, or am I going to leverage it to move forward? Knowing that whatever it is that is happening, I am not going through something, I am growing through something.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Well, there we go. If you've been watching this podcast episode or listening, and you've got some value out of this, I've got lots of value out of this. That share this conversation with your friends, your family, workmates, and if you haven't already done so, please follow this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes, and we can get this podcast out to the wider world. Lastly, I just want to say to everyone watching or listening is that you are loved and you are worthy. Champion your life and champion your greatness. Have an amazing day.